Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the press. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago, and viewers and listeners across the region and across the world. Tune in to our regular Sunday morning press conference, coming to you live from the headquarters of the United National Congress in Chaguanas, Trinidad. We're extremely pleased this morning to be here with you to discuss a few matters of national importance, matters of current affairs in the politics and economy of Trinidad and Tobago. This, as you're aware, members of the press, is a regular feature of the United National Congress and the opposition in Trinidad and Tobago, and we have been carrying on these conversations with you to provide information, analysis, and perspective on a range of issues affecting us as a nation and as a community. This morning, it is my pleasure to represent the opposition and the United National Congress and speak to you on several matters affecting us. I intend this morning to speak briefly, albeit, on a few issues, including crime, including issues surrounding UDICOT and specific infrastructure projects undertaken by UDICOT, is a point I was raising earlier in the week at our Monday night cottage meeting earlier in the week. I intend to speak as well briefly on the key matters affecting the region, particularly the conflict that has emerged between the Cooperative Republic of Guyana and the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela involving lands, and a deep conflict there has arisen. I intend to speak to that matter as well, and of course a few issues involving the TSTT and the continuing problem we face with cybersecurity, which is a matter we have spoken to already on this platform. And I will also make some very brief comments on the issue of the Paria report that has been sent to the Prime Minister and the President. Brothers and sisters of the press, ladies and gentlemen, our country continues to reel under the pressure of being a society that is today ungovernable by the People's National Movement. The government has collapsed in office. The country is being run on remote control. All institutions are down and out. Critical independent institutions have collapsed under the watch of Keith Rowley and his government. And of course, the first and foremost is that we have this continuing escalation in terms of crime, criminality. Today in the newspapers, we read of a police officer that appeared to have been murdered in central Trinidad. An officer of the municipal police in San Fernando has been found, his body. That is a very serious development involving now police officers increasingly as victims of crime. We have a newspaper article as well speaking today in the press on the issue of spent shells and those elements found at crime scenes. Increasingly we are being told that the country is now overrun not only with crime, but increasingly we are being overrun by forces that have access to police uniforms and police equipment, including as a result of the discovery of spent shells in a certain number at crime scenes. Now, we have raised this matter in the public domain already. It is in the Sunday Express. It is in the Sunday Express, I believe, at page 3, prominent article in the Sunday Express at page 3. Deeply concerning increase in Trinidad and Tobago Regiment TTPS spent shells found at crime scenes. This is a matter that has engaged the attention of the opposition by way of the Joint Select Committee on National Security. We have asked for an overhauling of the systems both at the regiment and at the police to ensure that equipment and ammunition in particular used by the law enforcement agencies are not found in the hands of criminal elements. The issue of uniform has also arisen, where within the last few hours we have reports of persons posing as law enforcement officers, TTPS officers, have indeed invaded the homes of certain people and conducted some of the most brutal criminal offenses. Now, this is a very serious matter, and we wish to call on the authorities, particularly the Ministry of National Security, the TTPS, and the Defense Force, to overhaul their systems to ensure that they do auditing of their systems to ensure that uniforms, ammunition, equipment used by law enforcement cannot reach the hands of criminal elements in the society. We also have the issues now arising where certain type of equipment, certain types of uniform and so on are to be found regularly in the hands of criminal elements. It means, therefore, that there is a need to reassess where we are in terms of the procurement of uniforms, the agencies, the companies that supply that, whether it is easy to duplicate, whether we need to look at another arrangement, whether we need to look at redesigning uniforms in some way, whether we need to change systems in place so that persons cannot access those uniforms or apparel looking like those uniforms. And maybe there's a need as well to review policy and law as it relates to clothing, equipment, and devices and so on used in law enforcement, which ought not to be in the hands of civilians, and particularly those with criminal intent. Those are some of the matters occupying the attention of Trinidad and Tobago, but the crime has continued unabated. And while that is happening, the Minister of National Security has abandoned the ship. This minister is not to be seen, he is not to be heard. In fact, it is very alarming that at a time like this, when the country is on edge in terms of national security, both internally and of course externally, and I'm coming to that in a few minutes, the National Security Minister cannot be found. The national security apparatus has fallen apart. The famous chairman of the National Security Council has gone on a global trip. I don't know if he's back, he's not back, but he has been absent from any discussion on national security, on crime, on criminality, and so on. They have appeared to have thrown their hands up in the air. I wanted to go immediately to the burning issue, one of the burning issues facing the country, of course, and the region, which is the issue of the impasse between Venezuela and Guyana. There's a story in the, I believe is the newspapers of yesterday. It is the Guardian, and it says, and I'm quoting from the newspaper, the Trinidad and Tobago Guardian, page 7, I believe. PM tells UNC, shut up on calls to mediate imbroglio. Now, this is a very serious matter. The PM, Prime Minister, in a nutshell, is telling the UNC to shut up in terms of calls to mediate this conflict between Guyana and Venezuela. Political leader, the Honorable Kamala Persad-Bissessar, has spoken to this issue. She has spoken to this issue and called upon Rowley and the government to take a more proactive approach in this matter. Now, without reading in detail the whole story and so on, Mrs. Persad-Bissessar made this call at several points, including her Monday night speech last Monday. The government, including Amory Brown and Keith Rowley, responded with a certain anger. And the Prime Minister's statement here, I want to tell you, there are some leaders who are arrogant. This is not just arrogant. I think this is beyond arrogant. It's hognorant, to use that term. The Prime Minister's words are arrogant and hognorant, because this really is unbecoming of leaders to be speaking in a manner like this. And he says, of course, the UNC ought not to speak. And Mr. Brown as well, Dr. Brown, echoed his sentiments by saying that Guyana is very clear on their policy approach, meaning that this matter is in the hands of the International Court of Justice in The Hague. It's an ongoing matter, and Guyana prefers not to have bilateral dealings and mediation and so on and so forth. That is the position of Guyana, and is a position that is well respected in the region. Mrs. Persad-Bissessar was very clear that under international law and under several binding treaty arrangements in CARICOM, Trinidad and Tobago has a moral and legal responsibility to offer, to help, to intervene. And Mrs. Prasad Bisesa was very, very clear on that. And I draw reference to just 2 documents, and we can find other documents, but there are 2 documents I want to draw reference to. First, there's something called the Treaty on Security Assistance among CARICOM member states. This was signed by Patrick Manning in 2006, more or less there. Trinidad and Tobago has a binding commitment to this. And I draw your attention only to Article 9, I believe it is, Areas of Cooperation. And it says, and I quote from the 2006 Treaty on Security Assistance among member states, the contracting parties agree to cooperate in the areas as set out. 1, combating threats to national and regional security. 2, minimizing the incidence of serious crimes, preserving the territorial integrity of the contracting states, conducting search and rescue missions and so on in the case of disaster, and any other mandate given by the contracting parties. Now, what is very instructive is that Trinidad and Tobago, being a signatory to this and having a legal commitment to this treaty, is a party to this treaty, and its objective constitutes areas of cooperation combating threats to national and regional security. We are indeed a party to this. If this is not enough, there is something called the Regional Security System. I have the treaty in my hand, the Regional Security System. This is dated as far back as 1999, signed by several heads of government in the region, brothers and sisters. And what is instructive, the Regional Security System, the last time we heard of this organization, I want to remind you, is when this organization and its agencies and units were commandeered to allegedly kidnap and transport to Barbados and back to Trinidad a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, one Brent Thomas, I believe his name was. That matter is before the courts now. But the RSS, Regional Security System, was engaged by agents in Trinidad and Tobago, including the police and the government, to kidnap a citizen and take him, bring him back from Barbados to Trinidad and Tobago. So this treaty in particular was signed in in the late 1990s by several governments, including governments throughout the region. But Trinidad and Tobago, of course, is a member of the RSS, the Regional Security System. Incidentally, Guyana joined in 2022, so Guyana is indeed a member of the Regional Security System. I draw your attention only to Article 4, I believe it is, Article 4, subclause 4 and 5. And let me read this for you because it is very, very much consistent with the statements made by opposition leader Kamla Prasad Bisesa. And I am reading from the Establishing the Regional Security System, a treaty. I'm reading from this treaty, Article 4, subarticles 4 and 5. And this is what it had to say. Subarticle 4, purposes and functions of the system. The member states shall conduct together whenever, in the opinion of any one of them, the democratic institutions, territorial integrity, political independence, or security of any of them is threatened. This is an objective. This is a purpose. This is a function of the regional security system, brothers and sisters. And it says that whenever the territorial integrity is threatened, the member states shall consult together whenever this is threatened. And here, number 5. The member states agree that an attack, an armed attack against one of them by a third state or from any other source is an armed attack against all of them. Did not Mrs. Prasad Bisesa said, touch one, you touch all? The PNM made a joke of that. Persons listen to her and say, what is that she's saying? She is paraphrasing and quoting from a treaty establishing the regional security system. This is what it says. The member states agree that an armed attack against any one of them by a third state is an armed attack against all of them, and consequently agree that in the event of such an attack, each of them in the exercise of the inherent right of individual or collective self-defense recognized by the United Nations Charter will determine measures to be taken to assist the state so attacked by taking forthwith, individually or collectively, any action including the use of armed force to restore peace and security of the member state. Now, this is clear. This is clear that Mrs. Prasad Bisesa is on solid grounds in terms of law, international relations, diplomacy, and perspective on this matter. And we wonder whether Dr. Rowley or Dr. Brown have not read these documents. They are not familiar with the commitment of Trinidad and Tobago under the regional security system. They are not familiar with our commitment under the treaty dealing with security. And would you believe Keith Rowley was at some time, I don't know now, at some time, he had responsibility for regional security within the CARICOM framework and appears to be ignorant of this. Mrs. Prasad Bisesa said, we must be cautious in going forward because what is happening with Venezuela, brothers and sisters, today it is Guyana. Tomorrow, Mr. President Maduro can decide that he appointed a governor to oversee Trinidad because 200 years ago, Trinidad was part of the map of Venezuela. So he will appoint a governor and he will send across somebody here to ensure that all of you have Venezuelan citizenship and so on. That is what is happening today. And I want to make a related point. While Mrs. Prasad Bisesa's statement is rooted in international law and our commitment to regional security, the PNM has an approach which they have shared over the years. It is an amazing approach. And Keith Rowley today, I want to put it flatly on the table. Since that Congo line episode in Caracas, Rowley, to quote Winston Churchill, I believe, said this. Rowley is like the person described by Churchill. And he says that a person cannot reason with a tiger when your head is in its mouth. You cannot reason with a tiger when your head is in his mouth. That is where Keith Rowley is now. His head is in the mouth of the tiger, and he cannot reason. Because he was in the Congo line jumping up, celebrating, and today he's compromised in dealing with this crisis in Venezuela. He is terribly compromised. And the PNM's position I was telling you about, it was articulated many years ago, and I have the institutional memory. The PNM says that when you call a country, whoever answers the phone is the boss. So if Maduro is president, well, he's the boss, because when you call the country, whoever answers. I put it to you this morning, members of the press. Suppose in 1943, the PNM called Berlin, and Adolf Hitler pick up the phone. Then Adolf Hitler is the boss of the PNM. He will be recognized as the boss, as the leader. You cannot take an unprincipled position like that, where you are dealing with dictatorship and authoritarian regimes and narco democracies and so on. You cannot take a position like that. And that is the issue that we are raising this morning. It is not who pick up the phone. Then if Adolf Hitler in Berlin pick up the phone in 1943, will you recognize him as the boss, as the leader, as a democratic leader? You cannot. So that position, that the PNM take position with the United National Congress. So those are the issues that are related to the Venezuelan issue. And I will only end this part of the discussion by saying that they were talking about Mrs. Prasad Bisesa ought not to get involved and say meet and mediate. Look at this story here. Ralph Gonzalez, Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, has confessed that he is having private talks with both Maduro and President Irfan Ali to see if he can mediate, to see if he can bring some peace. He has confessed in the newspaper that he has been having private talks with these leaders. When Mrs. Prasad Bisesa said that, they said, no, you're intervening in Guyana. Look what is happening now. We have confirmed, even before the newspaper, we confirmed yesterday from high government sources that indeed on Thursday morning at 10 a.m. in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, President Ali has confirmed to attend, President Maduro has confirmed to attend, and we are we are almost certain, but the president of Brazil, the very distinguished veteran Lula, is also scheduled to travel to St. Vincent to have discussions. And while President Irfan Ali has indicated clearly that the issue of bilateral discussions on the ICJ ruling and ICJ matter will not be discussed, he is available to discuss with neighboring President Nicolas Maduro. So this, brothers and sisters, has vindicated, has borne out the position of Kamla Persad-Bissessar and the United National Congress, when we should have been taking regional leadership on this matter. When Eric Williams, before 50, 60 years ago, took regional leadership, when the moment came to take regional leadership on this matter, Keith Rowley was compromised and cannot push his head out. His head is in the tiger's mouth. It cannot come out. So he cannot take leadership on this matter. It is Ralph Gonzalez, a senior politician and Prime Minister in St. Vincent the Greatest. So should Rowley now tell Ralph Gonzalez to shut up? Should he tell him to shut up and don't intervene? You are creating conflict between Guyana and Venezuela. The presidents will fly over Trinidad airspace and go to St. Vincent, while there was a time in the leadership of the Caribbean, with great respect, Eric Williams, Basdew Pandey, Kamla Persad-Bissessar, and yes, Patrick Manning, when this country exerted great regional leadership. Today, looking for Trinidad and Tobago Prime Minister, you cannot find him. He involved in some signing business in England, which we don't even know what it is he signed. There are questions to be asked. I'll come to that possibly later. So these are the issues I raised in the context of this Venezuela-Guyana matter. The other issue I just wanted to raise as well is that last week, Monday, I raised an issue concerning UDCOT. Concerning UDCOT. UDCOT has confessed to spending $147 million. Plus, because I want to tell you the bills are not in. All the bills are not in. They are still coming to the Parliament and asking for more millions of dollars to pay on the Skinner Park project in San Fernando. Now, Skinner Park is a legacy, is an historic, iconic recreation center, ground in Trinidad and Tobago, and particularly San Fernando and South Trinidad, Skinner Park. Skinner Park has hosted international football. Trinidad and Tobago senior men's football team played international matches there. I made a point, which I was not the only one making it, and I was certainly not the first. I want to remind you, it was a prominent football referee, administrator, brothers and sisters, a prominent man by the name of Osmond Downer. Everybody should know his name if you know football. He said, he's the president of the Trinidad and Tobago Football Referee Association. He said there can be no argument that in redoing and refurbishing Skinner Park, they made mistakes. I said it last week. Do you know UDCOT issued a statement to attack me? UDCOT issued a statement. It is dated December 6, 2023. I think it's the day after our meeting, if I'm not mistaken. And this quoted all the figures to say I was wrong, and the ground can host matches and cycling and track and field and all sort of things. Members of the press, look, Mr. Downer himself in an article in the online newspaper, I believe it is, it was at length, and again I don't want to read the entire thing, to say that what they did is they changed the field. Instead of east-west, I think they put the football field north-south. They moved the pavilion from south to what is the western side. And they made the ground smaller. So today, you cannot play football, adult football, at Skinner Park. You cannot. And today, I was wondering, we have a satellite photo because yesterday I passed by Skinner Park and it's lock and key. At the opening of that venue, I want to tell members of the press, the washrooms were locked. The washrooms were locked because they had a defect. They were defective. So people couldn't use the washroom when it opened. Mr. Garcia is on record as stating that this ground cannot host adult football matches. This is a satellite picture because we couldn't get in the ground. So this is a satellite photo of Skinner Park today, as it is now. What is remarkable is they made the ground smaller. And those of you who are aware of anything about football, If you watch where the 18-yard box is, 18-yard is outside there, 6-yard and 18-yard. The 18-yard box appears to be extremely close, a few yards away from the touchline, meaning the sidelines. Look where the corner flag is in relation to the 18-yard box. And this is Skinner Park today. They've just moved the field. They put the pavilion in the wrong place. When I say that, they're vexed. When Mr. Downer said that, I don't think they have any problem with Mr. Downer. To take a run-up, to take a corner, you have to come from the cycle track. You can break your leg running up on a cycle track with what we call football tugs and so on. This is the field. This is a satellite photo taken and shared, incidentally, of Skinner Park. I don't want to argue with Mr. Garcia and the staff at the, what you call UDCOT. I don't want to argue. You know what this morning I want to do? I want to lay out a challenge. At the opening, incidentally, let me remind you in case those of you don't know, they played a dress rehearsal match under 15. Under 15 because this ground is only certified to host under 15 and over 65 players. So if you're under 15, you could play football there, and if you're over 65. But between 15 and 65, I don't think you could play football there. And do you know in an under 15 match for girls, they started with 11 players on both sides. And they had to continue the match with 9 players on each side because 22 players couldn't fit on the field. This is Trinidad and Tobago, $147 million. You cannot play. I want to tell Trinidad and Tobago, the globally acclaimed, let's put it that way, footballers of this nation, Dwight York, Marvin Foston, Leonson Lewis, Russell Latapi, many of them played football in Skinner Park, San Fernando. It is the mecca of intercol, of secondary schools football. Recently, when there was a match between Presentation College and St. Benedict's in San Fernando for what is called the South Zone Intercol Final, you know they had to go Point Fortin to play that? First time in history we played the South Zone Final in Point Fortin, but it cannot play in Skinner Park, which took $147 million plus to be redone. This is where we are. So I want this morning to tell UDCOT and Mr. Garcia, we have a solution to the problem. Either you believe what the people are saying or you believe UDCOT. We have had a particular business community group in San Fernando, and they have offered to sponsor a friendly match between Presentation College and St. Benedict's. A friendly match they have offered to sponsor. They are offering to pay small fees for the players and to give both schools a small donation for their building fund, for their upkeep of their school. We have sponsors for a St. Benedict's Presentation College friendly match. That is a rematch of the final of South Zone. But on one condition we will sponsor this. It be played in Skinner Park, San Fernando. The match must be played in Skinner Park. If you can tell us that we can use Skinner Park to play a friendly match between Presentation and St. Benedict's, where the schools will benefit by a donation to their building fund, the players will get a small fee. So there are incentives to play that match. We will play it at Skinner Park. I bet you today, ladies and gentlemen, Noel Garcia and UDCOT will indicate that they cannot play a secondary school match at Skinner Park. Increasingly, they have spent $147 million plus for what really is a small goal venue, to play small goal. And UDCOT did this. The pavilions are up. It is on the western side. When we ask, why did you put it there? They say, goalkeeper complain that sun in the eye. But anywhere in the world you have sunshine, you will have sun in the eyes of goalkeepers one way or another. That is why goalkeepers wear a cap. All over the world you watch league football, goalkeeper wear a cap because for 45 minutes at least, the sun might bother you. Not the whole match, you're switching sides. In the National Stadium, those of you who are not so young to remember, the former goalkeeper Michael Morris complained that the sun was in his eye in the National Stadium in a critical match in 1989. So that is nothing new. That's why keepers wear cap. That's why in American sport and increasingly in the Caribbean, they put something under your eyes too, a sort of shield to block glare. There's equipment for that. You don't have to move the ground and get the ground smaller and move the pavilion necessarily. So that UDCOT has made a mess out of Skinner Park. I call for a proper investigation as to why this mecca of football and sport has found itself in a position where you have to go and play small goal and fet match. That is what that is now, a fet match center. After messing up Brian Lara Stadium, where today you cannot play a test match in honor of Brian Lara at his own stadium, today you cannot play senior football, adult football at Skinner Park. So I will leave that there as well as another issue this morning to leave with you. There are just 2 or 3 small issues I would deal with before closing. I wanted to announce this morning that after 8 years of struggle, of sweat, of marching, of protests, of parliamentary questions, of motions, of besieging, of begging, imploring the government, tomorrow, I believe Monday the 11th, the Ramaitres Hindu School, the Dr. Roodal Moonilal Ramaitres Hindu School will be open at 11 a.m. tomorrow. So that tomorrow the Ramaitres Hindu School will be open. The Minister of Education, I believe, is carded to attend and address. I am also carded to attend and address. I want to indicate one time that I hold no ill will towards this minister or anybody in this administration. That way, we hold no malice, no ill will. The school will be open after 8 years. We are extremely pleased and elated that the school will be open and the children will benefit. It is for the children. Regardless of what has happened over the years, tomorrow we go with our hearts joyful that the children will get their school after so many years. There's a matter, if I have to speak to, I prefer to speak in Parliament on this matter and to address it to the right authority. I also wanted to indicate that we had in the news recently another continuing saga of cybersecurity. Some of you will recall reading in the Trinidad Guardian, cyber criminals attack Blue Waters. Another company has been attacked, Blue Waters. Again, we are not clear on what information has been stolen, leaked, that can be released on the dark web, that could be released, that could jeopardize security of citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, of employees, of companies as well. Their particular accounts, their banking information, their security delivery systems, alarm systems, and so on. We are not sure what this means in terms of the security of Blue Waters. But I want to remind the population, October it was, I believe the second week of October, we had that issue with TSTT, where TSTT was compromised. To this day, there is no conclusive report at TSTT concerning the causes of that breach, that mega breach of security. No report from a company called Checkpoint. No report from any internal agency in TSTT. They fired the CEO, okay, but nothing has changed. The board of directors remain the same. That is the board that has been negligent. Sean Roach is the chairman. Nothing has changed. There is no report on that matter that involved 1 million accounts, including private, sensitive banking, employment information of citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And I call upon TSTT to issue a statement. Why is there no report? Why did you fire the CEO, who is now contemplating legal action, incidentally? Why did you fire the CEO and you have no report on what caused it? Brothers and sisters of the press, I wanted to indicate as well, we have information, other information. I have in my hand, and I will just hold it. I mean, it is not that confidential. I don't think it's that confidential. But I have in my hand what has been given to me, and I reasonably and honestly expect that it is correct and accurate. It is a performance appraisal executive scorecard. And this is a performance appraisal executive scorecard of a particular employee at TSTT. And I'll be very careful in choosing my words. I honestly believe this to be true and accurate. The name of the employee is Mr. Kent Weston, performance period probation, October 2023. This was just days before Mr. Weston was announced as the Chief Executive Officer of TSTT. And this particular executive scoreboard makes for depressing reading, because it speaks to areas of performance which are, to use the terms they use here, below expectations, on average, not making the grade, much more to be done, approaching expectations, but very few areas of exemplary performance. So that this person, while on probation, got what appears to be a failing grade. We have it here. And the person was on probation for a period of April 2023 to June 2023. When you look at this report, members of the press, and I have it in my hand here, the only area that this person ranked in a positive way was an area where all executives were ranked because of ongoing revenue, costs, and profits. So that when TSTT made a profit, as I think they did, claim they did, revenue, costs, profits, all executives get a particular rank because they are part of that, initiative. So he received what is called a met expectation report. Under project score, for projects delivered on time and within budget and scope, this is where the person had a direct influence. While on probation, he scored below expectations. It gets worse. For services delivered in accordance with performance appraisal, he scored approaching expectation. And for personal assessment, now this is personal assessment they have here too. For personal assessment, it was below expectation. So this person could not complete in a positive, exemplary manner a performance appraisal and went on to become Chief Executive Officer. It is not a secret. This can be found at the TSTT records. We have it in our hand here. The feedback was not positive. Is this another case of a square peg in a round hole? And we expect things to get better when we ourselves, the government and TSTT, are not employing best practices in terms of promotion. This person was on extended promotion to save himself and his job, but was confirmed by the TSTT board as Chief Executive Officer. This is a sham, and I call on Mr. Sean Roach, Chairman of TSTT, to explain the logic of this strategy, where people who cannot complete a probation are elevated to the highest office executive manager in a company. Only under Mr. Sean Roach and the PNM could this happen. But the Joint Select Committee of Parliament will get their hands on this report and will say much more in due course. In closing, brothers and sisters, I just want to tie up my contribution in closing by saying that we have found ourselves in a difficult time, both regionally and within Trinidad and Tobago. We are overrun by crime, as I said earlier. We are overrun by crime and lawlessness. While the government squanders millions and millions of dollars paying their friends in the legal fraternity and their family. And I wanted to point out, as Shadow Minister of Works and Transport, the Port Authority initiated legal action against a former an attorney at law, Ms. Nairi Alfonso, and others involving the fast service boat. And do you know they lost at the High Court? They have now appealed at the Court of Appeal. And we are calling on the government to say whether they have paid in excess of $15 million in legal fees, driven by malice to go after former appointees of the United National Congress and the People's Partnership. The Port Authority has paid millions, $15 million for lawyers in that matter involving the Superfast Galicia and the procurement of the services of that vessel. And they are appealing at the Court of Appeal, where they lost at the High Court. $15 million gone down the drain. The government is now in court at every point. They have so much matters against citizens suing the government. What is the sham in this country? Every day they are on attacking persons with legal firearms and so on. Mrs. Prasad Bisesa has stated our policy. We believe that citizens of Trinidad and Tobago who qualify ought to arm themselves with firearms and whatever legally is available after getting their license and so on, to defend themselves in the context where the government cannot defend citizens. We believe that citizens ought to have the wherewithal to defend themselves and stand their ground. That is our policy. It is very clear. The government is attacking persons who are in lawful possession of license, firearms and ammunition. They have gone on an all-out attack against legal firearms, not illegal firearms. They are not investigating how spent shells could be found from the defense force and the police at crime scenes. They are investigating how people got their legal firearm. It's an all-out attack. They're even attacking the persons who import ammunition. There's a matter in court now where the government is in the court in matters where persons who are allowed to bring in firearms and ammunition to sell legally are before the courts, demanding their right to conduct their business so citizens can get the wherewithal in terms of equipment to defend themselves. And that is a matter that we will keep our eyes on, so to speak. In closing, I want to repeat the call made, I think, yesterday by former Commissioner Gary Griffith, that Trinidad and Tobago must get into the state of readiness as what is called an alert state. That we trigger defense force, we trigger our law enforcement community, whether it's maritime assets, and on the maritime assets, up to now, we don't know what percentage of our maritime assets are non-functional. There are boats and so on procured by the People's Partnership, which are non-functional. In fact, if we have to help Guyana, what will we help them with? 2 water taxis and 50 wooden ladders? We have nothing to help. We have the boats are non-functional. Most of the helicopters are down. We cannot help anyone. And this is because Dr. Rowley himself is soft on crime. Has Dr. Rowley ever spoken about home invasion? Has he made one statement about home invasion? I ask you. And why? But you have to understand, he is not concerned with home invasion, because what Maduro is doing in Venezuela is really international home invasion. He is threatening to invade our next country. That's international cross-border home invasion. And Rowley is soft on home invasion in Trinidad and Tobago, and he's soft on home invasion as it relates to cross-border home invasion as well. Maduro is essentially involved in home invasion. It's just he's crossing a border. It is the same principle, going into territory and property belonging to another, terrorizing, threatening, and committing crimes. Only the difference is the border, and they will use different equipment if they decide to. So this weakness of Rowley is showing with his lack of leadership and commitment on international home invasion, on domestic home invasion. And Gary Griffith's call for an alert state with the requisite framework, structure, policy, and presumably law ought to be taken very seriously and implemented by this government. If not, it will be taken seriously by the next government. And we will, incidentally, look at that as a serious policy option as well. In closing, I want to remind the population, Fitzgerald Hines, in one of his waking moments, a brief waking moment, was boasting about catching a human trafficker and convicting him and so on, and then discovered the human trafficker escaped. He was able to bite off his plastic electronic monitoring device, and he left. We don't know where he is. Today I call on the government to give us an update, please, on what has been done to locate, to retrieve, to bring back for sentencing and to satisfy justice this human trafficker who was able to bite off his cheap plastic electronic monitoring device on his ankles. That is a matter that we will continue to keep on the agenda as we go forward. So, brothers and sisters of the press, there are other issues I'll raise in the coming days, including an update on the Tress Trail housing development, which we do have some information on. Some more information on the Atlantic LNG deal that we heard about recently. All I will say in this matter is that Mrs. Prasad Bisesa has issued a press release on this matter. She had issued a press release and called upon Keith Rowley for transparency, openness, and accountability. That the government must identify the potential liabilities, costs that will be incurred with this new shareholding arrangement, identify the market value of the government's new shareholding of Atlantic LNG, and the Ministry of Energy and the Prime Minister cannot negotiate shareholding agreements without knowing of the value of specific assets. We call on the Prime Minister to explain the new pricing formula to be used for LNG export, provide evidence to explain their claims about future additional revenue to be gained, provide details about how NGC will fulfill its natural gas supply obligations, identify costs paid to consultants who worked on these negotiations. These are matters we will raise in the coming days. The opposition leader and, of course, our shadow minister of energy, the very illustrious Dr. David Lee, will be raising these matters in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. I will continue on some of these issues to update the national community. So I will leave it there for now and take whatever questions may come my way. Thank you very much.
I have another question here, Dr. Moonilal. Can you further comment on the fact that the Jamaica Gleaner and other regional media reported yesterday that Keith Rowley told the opposition leader to shut up because she advised Trinidad and Tobago to hold mediation talks between Venezuela and Guyana?
Well, I think the region is tired. I get the sense from traveling in the region myself that the region is tired of Keith Rowley as the people of Trinidad and Tobago are. He has made a buffoon of himself regionally. As I said, he's ignorant. The leaders in the Caribbean, in leadership, who have been able to interact with have made, certain remarks and so on. I won't quote anybody, but I think the region is fed up. And for a Prime Minister to be speaking in this language about a constitutional office holder in the person of the opposition leader really speaks volumes about his own commitment to decency, to democracy, and to the rule of law.
I have 3 questions here from TV6, Alicia Boucher. First one, long. Prime Minister Gonzalez spoke to both leaders, Ali and Maduro, is in his capacity as pro tempore president of the Community of Latin America and Caribbean States, of which both Venezuela and Guyana are a part. And it's against that backdrop a meeting was arranged. Do you not think that TNT should await the outcome of those talks before mediating in the manner in which the UNC is suggesting?
Well, let's put it this way. The Trinidad and Tobago opposition, Mrs. Prasad Bisesa, indicated the importance of mediating, of meeting, of discussing, of having an open door and sitting around a table. That is the concept of the opposition leader of Trinidad and Tobago. It is a concept that Mr. Ralph Gonzalez has picked up. He's really acting out the approach that Mrs. Prasad Bisesa has outlined. So that whether Mr. Gonzalez did it or not, that is the approach Mrs. Prasad Bisesa outlined. In fact, had Mrs. Prasad Bisesa been in elected office as head of government, one can predict that she would have taken that approach of Mr. Gonzalez, whether she held the position or not as chairman of any Latin American organization or CARICOM as the case may be, because that is the approach we are looking at now. To quote unquote, the strategic approach now is to de-escalate. I think that's a policy now. De-escalate that situation. And you can only do that by meeting. You can't do that by threatening every day in a press conference. You have to meet and de-escalate the position. Mrs. Prasad's policy is to de-escalate while we discuss the issues around the table with leaders and critical leaders in this case. Dr. Rowley, he vomited when he heard that because in his mindset, he doesn't understand negotiations, discussion. He cannot even manage with the opposition in Trinidad to pass a bill. You think he will manage between Venezuela and Guyana? So he's out of place in a sense. But Mrs. Prasad Bisesa, with her years of experience in diplomacy, she was the chairman of the Commonwealth, I believe, for a time. She understands how it works in the international arena. And clearly Mr. Gonzalez understands that. That is why I think he will propose a breakfast on Thursday morning at 10 a.m. The leaders will meet. And at least that begins the process of talking, of keeping the door open, of discussion, to ensure that there is no armed conflict. The last thing I think the region wants is an armed conflict between Venezuela and Guyana and its allies, because Guyana is also building up a strong coalition in support of its position. It's a smaller territory, of course, so they are building a coalition of support, and it's a coalition of the willing to stand on the side of Guyana. The United Kingdom has issued a statement through its foreign minister, former Prime Minister Cameron, I believe, has issued a statement, so that they are lining up behind Guyana. Trinidad and Tobago ought to have taken a proactive approach as a leader in the CARICOM fraternity It did not, so Dr. Rowley will forever be at the back of the queue in terms of diplomacy.
Second question from TV6, Mr. Boucher. Does it really matter which Caribbean country mediates between Guyana and Venezuela? And why is it important to the UNC for TNT to take that role?
First, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which island. It could be Dominica, it could be Antigua, it could be St. Kitts. Take the role in bringing parties together. But all we are saying is Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar was, I believe, the first leader in the region to jump up and say, listen, we have to go this way. So in a way, she did lead. It is just Ralph Gonzalez continued the process. But Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar did provide regional leadership on the matter by indicating that we have to meet around the table and take a lead. Trinidad and Tobago has an historic, I'll tell the reporter, Trinidad and Tobago has an historic role within CARICOM. Not only have we been blessed with mineral resources and energy and industry and so on and human resource capacity, but Trinidad and Tobago from the days of Eric Williams has taken a leadership role in CARICOM, in CARIFESTA, in the Treaty of Chagaramas. We have taken a leadership role, and we ought not to surrender our leadership role. In fact, part of the vision of the United National Congress, it is economic, industrial development for Trinidad and Tobago, but is returning Trinidad and Tobago to its regional role in the leadership of CARICOM and indeed now in the Western Hemisphere. That is part of our vision, and this clearly is not part of the vision of Keith Rowley. His vision is anybody answer the phone is boss. So if Hitler answer the phone, well, Hitler is his boss.
Final question from TV6. How do you think both leaders, Maduro and Ali, should approach the meeting in St. Vincent and the Grenadines on Thursday?
Well, all we can do is remain quiet at this time in a sense and don't preempt, don't seek to comment too much. Excellency Irfan Ali has issued a statement, incidentally, on this matter, which I've read. He is very clear on the position of Guyana. Guyana has a position that this is a matter for the International Court of Justice in The Hague, and it is not a matter for bilateral discussions on the issue of the land and that historical conflict that they have there. But he is willing to discuss with his neighbor issues surrounding that particularly issues of conflict. And I think that's a very proactive approach, is a very daring approach at this time. I think, the Ralph Gonzalez should be complimented for his role in this matter, and also the leaders who have accepted this invitation. As you know, the president of Brazil has a special role in Latin America and the Caribbean as one of the most senior, experienced politicians and labor leader in this part of the globe. And I think if he attends, that will also bring some level of maturity and stature and a wise head to those talks in whatever capacity he may attend those talks on Thursday.
Okay, I have a question from Keejan Haynes. He has questioned whether it is correct that your name has been removed from the Ramai Trace Hindu School because you and Ram Bali have fallen out.
Well, I don't know anything about that at all. When I was at the school's Christmas party last week, Thursday, I believe, or Wednesday, and all the uniform of the children read Dr. Roodal Moonilal Ramai Trace in the school. I dare to think anybody would interfere with the uniforms of the children. That will be a criminal act indeed. So there's no issue there. I believe the Ministry of Education, on their listing of primary schools, if I'm correct, we have educators around as well. The school carries the title Dr. Roodal Moonilal Ramai Trace Hindu School. Whether the government of the day is happy or not with that, let me put it this way. I can believe that the PNM and agents of the PNM will be very unhappy with that. I can't believe that they will be wildly excited to open the Dr. Roodal Moonilal Ramai Trace Hindu School. But that has been done by Mr. Satmaraj, God bless his soul, many years ago. Satmaraj, then General Secretary of the Mahasabha, honored me for my work in the community by naming the school after me. It is not the only school that is named after persons. In fact, in that area, and several areas, many of the schools are named after persons. So I don't take on that too much, and certainly I don't get involved in these kind of little, pettiness and so on.
Last question, also for Keejan
Okay.
He's asking also about MP Rodney Charles and what are your thoughts on what was said this week?
MP Charles has, I think, issued a statement on his future in politics. I mean, one has to respect the views of our colleagues. MP Charles indicated that he will not seek re-election in 2025, given, circumstances and the passage of time and so on. All I have to do is to wish MP Charles all the best in his future endeavor. On behalf of the party, I mean, I would thank him for his service. He has given great service to the United National Congress. In fact, when MP Charles joined the UNC, I was part of a small team that received him. He has given great service to the international community on behalf of our government at the United Nations. He has served as a member of parliament, a very vibrant member of parliament at that, quite knowledgeable. And I am sure that MP Charles will continue to play some role in the governance of Trinidad and Tobago. Another question, these last questions are about 5, huh?
Yeah,
right.
You see, on this one, also MP Charles, they are asking, what do you think is a good age to go out of politics, when you decided to go out of politics?
Well, there's no age. Politics don't carry a retirement date like that. I mean, it's a question we could ask the Prime Minister Narendra Modi as well. It's a question we could ask the Prime Minister of Canada. There's no age. Politics don't carry that age, but usually one will give service. One will give service until they believe that, they have had enough or they have made their contribution. There's no age, and that's why you must respect Mr. Charles as well for his thinking on the matter. And once leadership is sometimes scarce, and particularly in small societies. Mr. Gonzalez, Prime Minister Ralph Gonzalez, I don't know what is his age, but I assume he is not 35. So that in the region itself, we have had the case where leadership continues because simply of the scarcity. But having said that, coming back to the point, we have great respect for Mr. Charles and his decision, and we wish him all the best in the future. And as I said before, I am sure that Mr. Charles can serve Trinidad and Tobago in the future. I want to end this by expressing on behalf of the United National Congress, on behalf of the Leader of the Opposition, on behalf of our National Executive, a very Merry Christmas to members of the national community. We wish you peace and happiness and joy, and very importantly, security at a time like this. We wish you security, peace, happiness, and joy, a Merry Christmas, a Holy Christmas. This is a time when the Christ child brought joy and hope and salvation to mankind, and is a time of great reflection and happiness, not only for the Christian community, but for all peoples of Trinidad and Tobago. We wish you a happy New Year. It will be a vibrant New Year. I want to put the PNM and Keith Rowley on notice that next year it will be fire above and below from the United National Congress. It will be heat in the politics next year. What we can promise Dr. Rowley is he will not have 1 hour of rest in 2024 when the UNC takes him on next year. I also want to indicate that in a few hours, I will address at Mayaro at the Rio Claro East Secondary School, I believe it is. I will address that on behalf of the United National Congress and Mrs. Prasad Bisesa. I will be the featured speaker at that function in Mayaro. It is being hosted by the Member of Parliament for that area, Mr. Rushton Paré, and we look forward in a few hours to be in the constituency of Mayaro, I believe is Rio Claro East Secondary School, where we will be attending and making a feature address at that special function in honor of persons who have served our party, the community and the national and the society over several decades. I look forward to that. For me, it will be a very special occasion.